Mr. Miller. And we don't have a quorum. We don't have a quorum without Miller. Saw him yesterday.
Wait for the,
No, because you only put on for that one day.
oh, so,
That's what Karen told me. I thought it was for good, but she said it's only for one day because we didn't do an ordinance. So you're
Got
not
it.
on this committee until we go to the full board.
got it.
And you can't do finance because it's immediately following this.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to call to order the March 8th, 2017 meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Here. Acting Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Here.
Let me put a point for the record that in the absence of the chairman, Board Chairman Peterson has assigned Ms. Alvaro Rosales to chair the Strategic Plan Committee meeting today. We have a quorum with 3 members of the committee present.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of July 13th, 2016. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvaro Rosales.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 3 yes votes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is a review of an ordinance authorizing a second 180-day experiment for bus route number 31, 31st Street. Our presenter today is Carol Morey. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
As you know, we began a 6-month pilot for new bus service on 31st Street back in September. Ridership has continued to grow on the route through the fall. We had an average of 651 daily rides in November. UPass accounts for about 52% of those rides. Once IIT was back in session in January, we saw the route averaging 633 rides. So the goal for this route is 800 rides on an average weekday. So we see strong and steady growth towards that goal, and we're recommending a renewal of that pilot for another 6 months. We'd also like to share with you some of the marketing efforts from the number 31 and the number 11. And so Brian Steele is here, our VP of Communications and Media, to help us with that.
Directors, good morning. Brian Steele, Vice President of Communications and Marketing. With the launch of both the number 31 and number 11 pilots, we wanted to ensure that we had a robust marketing and awareness campaign to make sure that both pilots were successful in their communities. So we worked to develop a number of things that I'd like to go through just briefly. Let's start with the number 31. We did some extra flyers, created some posters, used our digital advertising inventory to promote the service, created a new web page, and we did a lot of grassroots outreach, the proverbial boots on the ground, where we actually had people going door to door in the community. We developed these car card and posters that you see on the screen to show the route kind of in a schematic form and remind customers of all the things that they can do on the service, grocery shopping, going to the pharmacy, dining, etc. We translated these materials into both Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. I mentioned earlier the updated web page, and we did significant social media promotion, not only during the launch of the pilot, but throughout the continuation of the pilot. For the number 11, we followed the same basic playbook, but we dove a little further into it when the number 11 was renewed for a 6-month term in December. We saw it as an opportunity to do another promotional push. So we kind of customized some of the outreach, including working with DePaul University to advertise that service to their students. Again, we created a flyer and a poster about getting stuff done on the number 11, and then as you can see on the right, we did a DePaul-specific flyer. We also pushed content via Instagram and our digital screens, and again, we used our web page and ongoing social media to promote the service. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Good job.
Very good job. We don't have any questions from anyone now? Okay. I just want to thank you. I mean, it seems, so on the 31st, and thank you so much for using several languages in that particular area. And it seems like the response from the community has been very good. So it's my old neighborhood, so I like to see that. I'm glad to see that. There are no further questions, and we are finished. May I have a leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
We've concluded. Thank you so much. Don't we have to take a vote, though, a tally of the?
We need to put that on the omnibus, so we would need a motion to put that item.
I
Oh,
did.
we
I
just
made,
did that.
I made
No, we
the
just did a
motion.
I'm sorry, then we just
Yeah,
need a
and so
motion
there
to
was a
adjourn.
first, and there was a second.
Fine,
and
I'm
so
sorry.
we could.
Then we just need a motion to adjourn, Ms. Alvarez.
Okay, motion to adjourn then. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, we're set. Thanks. Oh, so hold on a second in case there's more. Hey, Pat, are there more people to come in right now? Let's bring them in now before we start class. Is there anybody else to come in, or Stanetta? No? So everybody, please be seated. Please silence your cell phones, all the people who've come in recently. Whenever you wish, Director Silva.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to call to order the March 8th, 2017 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Will the Secretary call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Director, or Chairman Silva.
Yes.
We have a quorum with 6 members of the committee present.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of February 8, 2017. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Will the Secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. Jeremy Fine, Chief Financial Officer. This morning, I'll be walking through the financial report for January. And the first up is with regard to revenues. The farebox and pass revenues are down to budget and down from January of 2016, following trends that we've seen through 2016 with regard to ridership and the impact of lower gas prices. With regard to the fare subsidy, we again see this down to budget and flat to 2016. Following the continued inaction in Springfield that we've seen, this $1.2 million drag is important, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. With regard to non-fare box revenues, we see those up to budget and up to January of 2016 due to additional advertisement and parking revenue. This is also to note prior to the effectuation of the fare or the rate increases on parking that went into effect on February 1st. So we'll have more to report next month on that point as well. Total revenues are down to budget and slightly down to January of 2016. We're down to budget of $2 million. And as we'll talk about on the next page, we continue to have strong expense controls in place that allows us to offset some, but not all of that drag on revenues. With regard to average fare, we see that slightly down to budget, but flat to January of 2016. And free rides, we see those slightly lower than where we were in January of 16. On the expense side of the house, we see labor slightly unfavorable, but on a percentage basis, essentially flat. Material, we see that slightly favorable due to the timing of invoices and the controls of material expenditures. Fuel and power, we see slight favorable variances on both line items. As you may recall, throughout 2016, we saw more positive variance on both of those lines due to the fact that rates were trending down. Now that we're at essentially 100-year lows, we still see some positive variance, but not at the excessive levels that we saw in 2016. With regard to injuries and damages and security services, those are essentially flat to budget and slightly up. as well as for other expenses, which are predominantly contractual expenses, we see those essentially flat, but slightly up to budget. So overall, we've been able to effectuate expense controls that have allowed us to capture approximately $700,000 of favorable variance to budget. So on a net-net basis versus our revenues, we're, again, offsetting the $700,000 against the $2 million drag on revenues. So we're down overall for the month of January about $1.3 million. Again, to circle back to the reduced fare subsidy, the reduced fare subsidy, as you recall, is $1.2 million. That's the amount that we expect from the state. And you can see it now materialize in a very clear way how much of a drag not receiving our full funding from the state for reduced and free fares has on our budget. And again, that is what we're supposed to receive from the state in the form of $28 million. But again, we give out more than $100 million of reduced and free rides on an annual basis. So again, we want to ensure that we receive our full allotment from the state because, again, that helps us offset some of these drags that we see on our overall budget condition for the month of January. With regard to our commodity purchases for fuel, power, and natural gas, as I mentioned on the prior slide, we see positive variance on a monthly and annual basis on all three commodities. We've been very fortunate to be in a very low rate environment for all three commodities. So we see that we've been able to lock in 80% of our fuel expected use for 2017, 80% for power, and 60% for natural gas. We've also been able to lock in some of our 18 and 19 needs as well. And again, we take advantage of market conditions and lock in a little bit more every day that we can when market conditions are very favorable for us. So this will continue to change throughout the year. Any questions with regard to the January update for the FAB?
Any questions?
Yeah, just Jeremy, in terms of the $270,000 positive variance, does any of that have to do with the mild winter that we've been having?
Yes, exactly. That's a great point. We have experienced, unseasonably warm weather, so that has allowed us to be able to capture a little bit of savings there on the material line in particular.
What are the rates for the commodities in 2018 as compared to 17 that we've practically locked in all of that? Are the rates favorable or are they going up?
So we've been looking at those very closely. Right now, in the last several weeks and months, there's been a dislocation between 17 and 18 rates. So the marketplace assumes that it's going to be a little bit more expensive to buy those commodities in 2018. So as such, we've not, as we indicate on this page here, we've not bought as high of a percentage. We expect, as prior years, those conditions to kind of ebb and flow. We've seen a little bit of that, so when we do, we buy a little bit more of a percentage for 2018, and we'll continue to monitor that along with our energy advisor on when the best time to lock in those 2018 levels are. We do have some time because we generally don't try to lock in for the full amount the way that we do for 2017 until we get closer to the budget. So we do have a little bit more time to lock in those 2018 needs. But we are still at very, very low rates. It's just more of inside baseball of trying to secure the best rate possible. But we are still at, basically 100-year lows across the board.
Can you give us some more color, about the subsidy from the state, where we stand, and are we gonna get there?
So the state for years in the past has given us through the RTA structure and the other service boards $28 million for compensation for those free and reduced fare rides. That had come in on a fairly steady basis for years. And then the last couple of years, we saw, due to the state budget impasse, a reduction in the amount that we would receive from the state by about half. So instead of receiving 28 million, we started receiving 14 million. There was an announcement last year, and the governor echoed it again this year with regard to a potential elimination of that free and reduced fare subsidy. Obviously, that is of great concern to us. There's not been any legislation proposed or passed on that point, but it is something that we monitor very closely because this, again, has a very material impact on our budget. So we want to make sure that we're receiving the subsidies that we've long received from the state. So again, we assume for budget purposes the full 28 million, but again, we've only received approximately half of that over the last couple of years.
What do you mean by material impact?
So again, any dollar that we lose, as Chief Financial Officer, I consider very material. We want to make sure that we get every dollar that we're promised to get, because otherwise we have to make other accommodations to deal with those shortfalls.
Any other questions?
Are we looking at any programs in place? Because it seemed like the expenses we're controlling pretty well, because every meeting we have, you rave about how well we're doing in expense management. It just seems as though the revenue side is the one we're lacking ridership, and that's drawing down on our bottom line. So are there any programs that we're currently looking at in place to increase that revenue stream?
So with regard to non-fare box revenues, we continue to be in conversations with our advertising folks to see what additional that we can get out there in the system to drive non-fare box revenues. Again, we have the parking rate increases going into effect on February 1st. So again, we hope to see some additional benefit on that front. With regard to fare box and passes, again, we are rolling out, and you probably have seen it in the form of the car cards on the system with regard to transit benefits. And that is, again, we've talked about that through the budget process last year, but we are starting to see a number of folks clicking onto the link that's provided on the car card. So we're starting to see some influx of people being interested in the transit benefit program. Again, that will help us secure more regular riders. That program is basically a tax advantage program that allows folks to buy a pass, 7-day monthly pass at a tax advantage rate, and therefore they become more regular riders. So again, us promoting that, particularly on the 30-day pass, we hope to not only drive revenue, but drive additional ridership, because folks will have that pass in their pocket, and they won't have to make that, ride-by-ride decision on what type of transportation that they take.
Are we promoting, are we promoting that heavily with corporations and other businesses in the city?
Yes, so we are in the process of meeting with corporations around the city to, again, not only promote this as a new option, but if you do have it already and you already are promoting it within your company, we want to make sure that that new folks coming into the company, are trained, as to the benefits of it. So just because the company has it set up doesn't mean that we're kind of passing them by, because we want to make sure that we get deeper penetration from, each company to ensure that, we're getting a broader array of folks, within their employment.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to add a little bit more to what Jeremy was talking about on the revenue side of the house, obviously a big component of that is just ridership, and looking at ways that we can increase ridership on our system itself to deal with some of the trends that we've seen recently. And there are a number of projects that we're undertaking right now to put in place both marketing and other opportunities to improve our ridership numbers, as well as service tweaks and other things that we can do that can be supportive of that. Those are still being developed, and at the appropriate time, we'll certainly come back to the board and give you a more detailed briefing on the other things that I think we can do to try to address these trends, separate and apart from the traditional revenue, fare media and non-fare box revenue options that we're also pursuing. So we're trying to aggressively find ways to adjust this recognizing that this is a trend that we're seeing across the country right now. There are a lot of complicating factors that are impacting that. But, we recognize that we have to put a product out there that's competitive and that our customers want to use, and we're trying to identify opportunities where we can improve upon that.
Any other questions? See, there are no further questions. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance regulating travel, meal, and lodging expenses pursuant to the Illinois Local Government Travel Expense Control Act. Jeremy?
Thank you, Chairman. In 2016, the Illinois General Assembly sent the governor a bill designed to increase the accountability of local public agencies when spending on meals, travel, and entertainment. The governor signed the bill into law in the middle of 2016, and the new law, called the Local Government Travel Expense Control Act, went into effect on January 1st, 2017. This act applies to non-home rule units of government, and the act requires public agencies to regulate the reimbursement of travel, meal, and lodging expenses of employees and officers of a local public agency. The act requires an ordinance or resolution to be put in place by June 30, 2017. And in addition, any expenses exceeding the maximums outlined in the ordinance or any travel expenses of any member of the governing board must be approved by a roll call vote during an open meeting starting March 2nd, March 1st of 2017. The new law will overlay what we already have in place here at the CTA with regard to a robust procedure and review process. The ordinance will add two important functions, one that we've added on and one that's required as part of the law. What we've added on is a report to the board that will be generated if costs are above the 125% of the GSA level for lodging, airfare, and car rentals. Obviously, we encourage public transportation when that is available. And meals will be reimbursed at the GSA rate, but will be reported if not. And then the law requires that if costs exceed 200% of lodging, meals, airfare, and car rental, then the authorization of the board is required for reimbursement. The premiums to the GSA that we've outlined here of 200% are built into the reporting and authorization process since the federal government often has special rates that cannot be replicated by local governments. And then other local entities have also adopted this. As I mentioned, this is required for non-home rule units of government within the state of Illinois at a rate similar to ours of the 200% level. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Can you explain how do we establish the GSA rate, or who does it?
Sure. So the GSA rate is basically a rate that the federal government has with particular vendors or based on, city pairs for airfare. So again, you probably are most familiar with this in the form of lodging. You usually can see like there's a government rate or a AAA rate or whatnot. So again, the federal government outlines what the GSA rate is for a particular city in the case of lodging, and then hotels will offer that rate to employees of federal or local governments. So again, we will map because it's a fairly standard, both in terms of the application as well as the computation of the GSA rates. We will use that as our standard as well, because again, that's what you typically see not only on the federal level, but across jurisdictions around the country. So again, we utilize that as the baseline. As I said, a lot of times, particularly in airfare, where the federal government has special contract rates with the air carriers specifically, that is a rate that we cannot replicate just due to that special contractual relationship. So that's why we allow for the additional percentage above the flat GSA rate.
Okay, any questions?
Jeremy, are there any reporting requirements? Because I know this is sort of like making sure that we're in compliance with what the governor signed and the General Assembly approved. Are there annual reporting that we've got to do regarding this?
So the law requires us to have authorization in an open roll call vote for anything exceeding the maximum. We've added on an additional layer of governance here with regard to anything between 125 and 200%, where you will be provided on a regular basis an update as to any expenditures within that bandwidth. Again, the state law only requires an open roll call vote with regard to expenditures over the 200% level, nothing with regard to reporting per se.
Jeremy, and we already had a travel expense procedure in place that was fairly stringent, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. The CTA has really been on the forefront of expense controls in this category for a long time. This was actually implemented on a statewide basis because of other issues around the state away from what the CTA has done. As I mentioned, we have very robust requirements, where we really are looking at, getting multiple bids for, those different, categories that I outlined, making sure that we're getting the best rate possible. And then, both the finance department and the president's office reviews the need for travel, what we're traveling for, as well as the cost associated. And sometimes, we just go ahead and say it's not worth the additional cost to travel at this time for whatever for whatever purpose is, and delay the trip for another time.
Thank you.
So our rules and regulations are similar to what other governmental agencies have, where it's analogous to what
They're-
everybody else.
They're either similar and/or more layers of oversight in the form of the report that we'll be providing you for expenditures between 125% and 200%. The 200% is what we're seeing other jurisdictions around the state employ as the baseline for board action. But again, we're providing an additional layer of oversight in the form of the report that we'll be providing for expenditures even below that level.
And I believe you shared that the other day, that some of this cost is last minute, being called last minute to do, not able to.
Sure, there's times where, you may exceed the GSA rate, the 100% of the GSA rate, due to the fact that, there's particular needs to secure, federal loans and grants, particular inspections that may be of last minute nature. But again, we are very stringent on trying to push folks to secure travel 30 days prior to the departure date, because you get a more advantageous rate then. But there are times, from time to time where there is some type of emergency type travel. And again, we'll be, notifying you all with regard to those circumstances if they, again, fall into those bandwidths that I talked about.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have you to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
I'll second.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Google Inc. to access authority property to collect images for Google Street View program.
Sure, and Mike
Chair-
Nguyen, the revenue director, will join me as well.
Michael Wing.
Yeah, so, Mike.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Michael Gwynn. I'm Director of Revenue and Fair Systems. Presented for your consideration today is an agreement with Google to allow Google to enter the public areas of CTA rail stations to record images for Google's Street View program. Google's Street View program allows web users to virtually visit places. While Street View has been long in use through Google Maps for street views, Google has expanded it recently to provide 360-degree views to natural wonders, historic locations, national parks, sports venues, and some transit stations. These images will help visitors to Chicago get a view of CTA stations before their trip, hopefully making themselves more comfortable with navigating the system and more likely to use CTA when they visit Chicago. Filming will occur during non-peak times in order to minimize any impact to customers. The specific locations for Google to film will be determined jointly by CTA and Google can only film in approved public locations. The Term of this agreement is 2 years with multiple one-year options to renew. There's no cost to CTA for the agreement. Business Development has consulted with CTA Communications, Operations, and Security, and all are supportive. Each filmer will be required to receive a safety briefing prior to going out, and Google will be required to get consent forms for any person that they happen to film. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
And just to circle back to Director Youngblood's prior question with regard to driving ridership and revenue, again, this will allow, particularly, tourists coming to the city, the opportunity, and also new residents, the opportunity to really visit the stations prior to getting on the system. We have a very large, busy, robust system, which sometimes is overwhelming to folks that may not be familiar with it. So this will be an opportunity for folks to familiarize themselves not only with the functions of getting in and out of the system, but also we'll be looking at how we can overlay ADA accessibility so that folks understand where they need to go and how they get there with regard to those functions as well.
Any other questions?
And I was just going to say, so this is really a promotional opportunity between CTA and Google at no cost to us.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'll point out that we'll be among the first, if not the first, North American transit agency to have this in our system.
What are we doing for safety, okay, of the usage, okay, of those?
We will make sure that they're only filming, first of all, in places that we want them to film. So if there are any sensitive areas that we don't necessarily want to broadcast out, we'll make sure that they don't go there. We'll have final approval of how they go about it, what they take pictures of. The filming itself is all on like backpack cameras, so it's a very small footprint as they go around. So we're not talking about big shoulder-mounted things. It's pretty innocuous. They have done this in places, lots of transit agent stations in the rest of the world, in Europe, in Asia, and South America, as well as places like the Taj Mahal. So they're accustomed to doing this in very crowded areas with not too much actual impact to everybody else.
But we'll also be ensuring that they do it at times that don't affect, our ridership trends and things like that. And, it's similar to what you see on the street view, where they try to do it in kind of off-peak times so that they can actually film what they're trying to film as opposed to a bunch of people standing around waiting for a train.
Are we going to have access to the filming, okay, before it's released to the public?
Yeah, so
Yeah, we will we'll work closely and review everything to make sure that it's proper before it goes live.
Okay.
Let's make sure we look good.
yes.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is, are they going to be going to the any of the transfer points between rail and bus? Because I think sometimes it's pretty confusing when you are transferring from rail to bus. Where do you go when there's a lot of different bus routes coming through that area? It seems like that would be a really useful and helpful.
I think it's a great idea, and we'll make that suggestion. If you think about like the new 95th Street station when it's done, that'll be a great opportunity to showcase the new construction, the new project, as well as provide all that wayfinding assistance for a complicated area.
What about, I know this isn't exactly a fit with what they typically do, but do you know if they would be able to go in to each different type of rail car and bus vehicle that is out there? Just because I think for people that are learning to use the system that aren't as familiar, knowing what kind of vehicle they might actually expect to encounter when they're on a particular route or a rail line might be very helpful.
Sure.
And I know, like for people with like intellectual disabilities or other disabilities who are needing to learn more about the system, knowing what the layout is and being able to see it through that Google Street View could be really helpful.
I don't know that they have typically gone into vehicles. We'll definitely bring it up with them, and if they don't, we can kind of send out feelers for people who do it. That could be very beneficial, not just for travel training and helping people get more familiar, but as we roll out more historic cars, the holiday train, there could be some other fun stuff that we could do to help showcase what we do.
Is there a set time when they're updating the pictures, or do we contact them and say we're doing something different, and then they update them?
We'll work together. I don't know that we know that level of detail yet. But this hopefully will be a long-term relationship that we have with them. So as we make changes, as we make improvements, we can call them up and say, hey, why don't you head on out to, the new Wilson Station, for example. Take a look at it.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional trade agreement for 2017 with the City of Chicago through its Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Jeremy and Mike.
Sure. Presented for your consideration is a co-promotional agreement with the City of Chicago's Department of Cultural and Special Events, otherwise known as DCASE. This is the 25th year that CTA has partnered with DCASE or its predecessor, the Mayor's Office of Special Events. DCASE organizes a lot of the large events and festivals in the city of Chicago, such as the Taste of Chicago, the Jazz, Blues, and Gospel Fests, farmers markets, and the Air and Water Show. In all, there are 16 festivals and special events that are included in this co-promotion. CTA is providing $957,900 in unsold advertising on buses and trains in exchange for sponsorship recognition at the various DCASE events. Again, for this year, we did this first time last year. We are expanding this beyond just the normal car cards to also offer larger format car cards for the Taste of Chicago, the Lake FX Summit and Expo, the 5th Star Awards, and the Millennium Park Concert Series. In exchange for this consideration, CTA will receive dedicated space on the event's websites and elevating CTA's profile for the website visitors. This promotion will allow CTA to reach out to a larger audience, including visitors and residents who may not currently use the system, and encourage use of CTA to access these wonderful events, as well as any other travel that folks take around town. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Thank you.
Our next, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance approving the authority's 2013-2015 Title VI Program Triennial Report and authorizing submittal to the Federal Transit Administration. Tom, morning.
Good morning. Tom McCone, Chief Administrative Officer. I'm joined by,
Mike Conley, Vice President of Service Planning and Schedules.
every 3 years, the CTA is required to submit a Title VI program plan and report to the Federal Transit Administration. Title VI prohibits a provider of public transit from discriminating against customers in its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, or national origin. Most importantly, the report, which was jointly created by the Service Planning Department and the EEO unit, contains no findings of disparate impact for the time period of 2013 to 2015. The analysis reviews the provision of transit services across numerous factors to ensure equitable provision. The report also describes the CTA's ongoing Title VI initiatives, including the complaint procedure. Upon board approval, the report will be submitted to the FTA. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions?
So Tom, do you have some ideas of things that we do beyond what the federal government kind of requires as an agency?
Yeah, I think one thing that's noted in the report is that really Title VI is incorporated into all of the decision-making the CTA does. So, while, every 3 years we have to do an analysis of our provision of services and amenities, what you see is that on a day-to-day basis, things like, where maybe vehicles are assigned or where, signage is put up, Title VI is always considered in that decision-making. And so I think that really comes through in this report because, we analyze close to a dozen different categories, and it's clear that there's no disparate impact across all those categories, and that only happens when that decision-making is incorporated through all the decision-making within the organization.
Any other questions?
We don't foresee any problems with the new administration regarding the thresholds and that have been for the past 6 years under the old administration.
Yeah, so this Title VI is a program that was established in 1964 as part of the Civil Rights Act. So it's been in place for a very long time, and so we've been very accustomed to adhering to the Title VI requirements. In addition, the board in 2013 passed additional policies and procedures to support the requirements of Title VI. So I, first of all, don't foresee this going away at the federal level. And second of all, the board has made a pretty strong statement that this is a policy that the board wants to uphold, and so we'll continue to abide by it.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item of the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
A second. Will the secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
We are adjourned.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for March 8th, 2017. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Irvine.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
You have a quorum with 6 members of the board present, sir.
Our next order of business today is public comment. Greg?
Yes, I'll call up 3 people at first. Mayor Thompson's here.
You just called
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I support our mayor. Field promotion.
You know, I worked for many years with the mayor's wife, so I hope Amy doesn't hear that one. That's for sure. Alderman Thompson. Also, I'm going to bring up Brooke Onweis. And also Benjamin Huey. Benjamin, come up. And Alderman Thompson, we'll certainly start with you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chairman Peterson, members of the board, President Carter, I come here to say thank you. I'm here in my capacity as Alderman of the 11th Ward, and I want to thank you for your support with extending the CTA bus on 31st Street. I appreciated your support 6 months ago when we started this, and appreciate continuing to work with you over the next 6 months as we have this pilot program that will continue to improve the quality of life for the residents in the entire city, but especially in the 11th Ward. Over the last 6 months, it's been terrific to see the ward flooded with people waiting for the bus along 31st Street. Families taking the bus to some of the retail stores along 31st Street, to the restaurants, parents taking their children to school, and seeing the number of students taking it to IIT and the College of Optometry, just east of my ward, and many of those students live in the 11th Ward. The positive feedback has been overwhelming, and my community can't thank you enough for giving us the opportunity. The numbers continue to grow. We continue to promote and continue to encourage ridership along 31st Street. I want to especially thank Gerald Nichols and Jeff Wilson for working with my staff and myself to accommodate the riders and help answer any questions that we've had along the way. My community, especially the children, were especially grateful for the holiday bus that was in our ward in December. And so I want to thank you for making that happen. And I look forward to working with the CTA over the next 6 months to continue to increase the ridership and perhaps tweak the route for this summer ridership. And ultimately, our goal is to be able to have that 31st Street bus permanently installed, perhaps and also expand the hours. But we know we have a lot of work to do to continue to the ridership, continue proving that there is a demand there, and we look forward to working with you and your staff. And so I'm just here again to say thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Our next speaker will be Ms. Brooke Onweiss, and I hope I pronounced that properly. And,
Close up, it's a hard one.
Thank you. And if you could please limit yourself to 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. So, as said, ladies and gentlemen of the board, President Carter, my name is Brooke Omies. I'm a leader with Bridgeport Alliance and a resident of the Bridgeport community. I'm here today to give thanks on my behalf and behalf of my neighbors. Though certainly not one of the longest bus routes in the city, the 31st Street bus winds its way through 2 neighborhoods that house over 40,000 people of many racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds. The bus provides easy access to more than 10 houses of worship, 8 schools, and 3 train stations that themselves offer the ability to travel as far as Howard, Oak Park, and Midway Airport. The bus also passes through the IIT campus, which is attended by nearly 9,000 undergraduate and graduate students. All this is to say nothing of the dozens of businesses in its path, ranging from local and chain restaurants to bars, grocery stores, laundromats, corner and drug stores. Additionally, this bus gets within 4 blocks of Mercy Family Health Center, an invaluable resource for so many in our communities, but one that was previously inconvenient to get to. Though I am new to Bridgeport Alliance, our leaders have been working to establish this route with other community groups since 2011. Not because we love a long, drawn-out struggle, but because we love our neighbors, and because we perceived a real gap and a real need in the community and sought to address it. We are glad to have been finally responded to and grateful for the extension of the 31st Street bus pilot today. Once again, I would like to offer the most sincere thanks from the Bridgeport community, Bridgeport Alliance, and from our partners in the Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community for extension of the 31st Street bus pilot program. We are excited to see what summertime brings to the route, from riders taking trips to get ice cream, attending White Sox games, visiting public parks, and getting pretty close to the 31st Street beach. Thanks to the addition of this bus, the extension of the pilot, and what we look forward to being the establishment of a permanent route, the future looks bright for Bridgeport.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Onweiss. Our next speaker will be Benjamin Huey.
Good morning, CTA Board.
Take the mic.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning.
CTA Board and Chairman Peterson. My name is Benjamin Huey, a resident of Bridgeport. I'm a member of the Bridgeport Alliance and First Trinity Lutheran Church. I have lived in and around Bridgeport for my whole life. I used to ride the 31st Street bus from 1987 to 95, and I'm happy to be riding it again. I want to pause to thank the Lord for another amazing day. This day is amazing also because the CTA has given us the 31st Street bus. Now, the people up north who ride to Lincoln are grateful too. We hear that we have a reason to hope today and that you are going to vote to extend the pilot of the 31st. The first step is to making our route last for a really long time. And the first step toward a permanent route with even better daily hours and weekend hours. I spend a lot of time talking to people in the community. As I spoke with students and neighbors, they have told me that it is easier for them to get home on the bus than it is to get to work and to school. This is because the bus does not start until 10 a.m. The kids say it is hard to pick up their brother and sister from school as the bus only runs every half hour. The hours are also hard on the seniors as they can't get to church on Sunday, and now that it is Lent, we can't get home after midweek worship. We also still want to shop on Saturdays. We can't do that yet. We are grateful knowing that you are about to make the right decision to extend this pilot, and we look forward to a permanent route with better hours to meet the needs of the people. It was good to see some of you riding the bus at the launch as well as Christmas time. Mr. Irving, seeing you always makes me happy. Thank you for riding with us. Thank you for supporting the bus. Thanks for your vote for the extension of 31st Street bus pilot. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming down. Let me just add, right before you came in, they talked about the ridership. So I think we try to average somewhere around 800 riders a day over average. I think we're up around 600. So clearly you've been doing an incredible job of continuing to promote ridership. Again, I would just say continue to work with staff on it, because I think the way to accomplish some of the things that you talked about in terms of extending the hours, and all of that, it goes with ridership. At the end of the day, we're facing the challenge of not getting money from Springfield. So if we can get ridership
Right.
where it needs to be, then we can start to talk about how do we make those other things happen. So again, thank you for your involvement. Alderman, thank you for coming down and continue to work with our staff in terms of just going door to door. And like you said, I think with summer coming, hopefully with the opening of the new 31st Street Beach and just folks getting outside a lot more, hopefully we'll see that number get up to the 800 number. So again, thank you for coming down. Appreciate it.
Like I said, all those kids,
Thank you all.
they're telling me what they have.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to call up 3 more speakers right now. I'd like to call up Mr. Michael Payne. Mr. Michael Payne, if you could. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Michael Payne, Mr. Tommy Sams, if you would please step forward. And also the president too, Jeff, everybody up there. And also Mr. Ken Franklin. If Mr. Franklin could come up. Just please be seated. Which one's Mr. Franklin? I'm sorry, I'm confused. You're Mr. Franklin, okay. All right, and again, if each speaker could limit their remarks to 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. And I'll start with you, Mr. Michael Payne.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
My name is Mike Payne. I'm a 67-year-old lifelong resident of the Chicago area. I'm also the author of the CTA Gray Line project, which would incorporate the in-city metro electric district lines into CTA's L system. I have addressed the board here when Frank Cruci, Carol Brown, and Ron Huberman, and you, Chairman Peterson, and you, President Carter, were in charge, but it would seem to no avail. Recently, Senator Tammy Duckworth held a symposium on transit funding. Representatives from all the transit agencies and associated agencies were there, and I know from someone who attended the meeting that the Gray Line and/or improving service to the South Lakefront was not even brought up. After all, the idea is from a gas station cashier. Nearly every day today, we read about people being killed and other violence in neighborhoods like South Shore, Chatham, Grand Crossing, Woodlawn, and East 71st Street, where a new CTAL service would greatly improve the job and economic situations there. City Hall last June asked the RTA, CTA, and Metra to study implementing the Metro Electric into CTA's L system. The results were to be released early this year, which is why I am here to inquire about. I know that you can't answer now, but hopefully we should have information about the results in the near future. I will also be addressing the RTA and Metro boards next week on the same subject matter. Mayor Emanuel, I'm sure, is planning to run for re-election. He has recently spent a couple $1 million on reawakening the Airport Express idea yet again. I'm sure the people voters in those communities ravaged by violence and crime will appreciate transit funds, city funds, whatever they are, being spent on an airport train, which with fares of $20 to $25, they would never be able to ride. Thank you very much for your time. For anyone that wants information about the Gray Line, do a Google search. I have a very large interactive website. Thank you very much, and you all have a nice day.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Our next speaker will be Mr. Tommy Sams. Please speak into the microphone, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
And the board. Morning, Dorval. Brad. How you guys doing? Tommy Sams, President Business Agent for ATU Local 241. And I was really happy to hear about the people that spoke before us about the service, restoration of the 31st Street. I represent the members that provide that service. And we're here today, and we're talking about issues that were brought up last spring. And I'm asking the board to give us an immediate fix. Last spring, when we started contract negotiations, I brought up the issue of porta potties, temporary restroom facilities, the fact that they're not clean, they're unsafe, no lighting, no water, no hand sanitizer, and most of the time, no tissue. And today is International Working Women's Day. And I'm asking you guys to take a good look at this issue. The women that I represent, these are mothers, daughters, grandmothers. The service is 24/7. They work nights, they work weekends, they work holidays. Here we are in 2017, and I don't understand how or why the authority wouldn't put this first and foremost to give them proper restroom facilities. It's a basic human right. From what I'm hearing from our members, they don't use them. They choose not to use them because of those issues I previously mentioned. We've asked the city council to send you a letter in an effort to get these things done as soon as possible. These folks are out there working. The recovery times that you're giving them are ridiculous. 5 minutes at the end of the line for anybody is not enough time to stretch your legs, take care of your business, and then go back to the service. Get back on the bus and provide that good service. So I'm asking you to do a couple things. The schedules, for one, have to be fixed. The schedules that we receive when it's time to pick, we must receive that information at least 30 days in advance, because we have to take a look at the runs to make sure, one, they're paying properly, two, they're giving them ample amount of time at each end of the line. So we're asking today that the CTA, that the board, issue some form of mandate to the garages, do something to fix this toilet issue. We're saying if you're going to do a temporary fix with porta potties, give them better porta potties. We've looked at them. You have the ones with the heat, with the lighting, with the locks on the doors, security around it. We have to protect the people that provide the service. It's all about respect, gentlemen, ladies. So I'm asking you guys to make a serious effort towards correcting these simple problems. It's been going on far too long. There's 20 of them. And where they sit, you could easily build a restroom. So we're saying if you're going to do something temporary, why not give them a better porta potty? Give them a better restroom until you fix it with a temporary or a permanent bathroom. That's what we're asking for today. And please assist me in getting these schedules ahead of time so we can work with the authority to fix the runs, to make sure that they pay properly, number one, and that they get the proper recovery times at the end of the line. 5 minutes is not enough time. Not enough time. So just please respect the people that provide the service. That's what we're asking you today. Just show some respect and take care of these members.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Our next speaker will be Mr. Ken Franklin.
Good morning, Chairman Peterson, board members of the Chicago Transit Authority, President Carter. I'm hearing a lot of beautiful things that CTA is doing, extending service and bringing aboard Google. But what I'm not hearing is the quality of working conditions that the workers are under being addressed. If I may, I'd like to have one of my personnel show you some pictures of the homeless situation on the train that my workers deal with every day. Can I show you guys some pictures?
Wait till Greg comes back. Where did Greg go?
Okay, all right. There's a lot of anguish amongst the 8,000 to 9,000 members that work for the Chicago Transit Authority, that support the system that affords the rest of Chicago to do what it does. It's a lot of anguish. And quite frankly, you're sitting on the powder keg. The workers are going through tremendous policies that need to be updated. They're antiquated, and they are very stringent. They're creating conditions that are unsafe. They're creating conditions that your workforce, my members, President Sam's members, are not afforded a lifestyle that produces a healthy environment. So I'd like to know what you know about the working conditions down on with the people that work on the ground, that make this system work, that support the system. We feel that we are the heart and vessels of the city. Again, we afford the rest of the business that occurs in Chicago to operate. And our priority level, the human element of what we do, is dropped down considerably. Thank you. We'd like to see the respect from a human aspect from the authority, treat the workers better, provide them better conditions. Timely, I attended a meeting at City Hall last May or June regarding the homeless situation, and we're still waiting for some sort of resolution. Those photos contain a homeless person that's defecated in the facility at Clark and Lake, pictures of about 10 to 15 homeless men that are sleeping on the train, and there's a bag with many needles that were swept off a train by the car service in the morning. So I'm here today to find out exactly what you know regarding the conditions we're working under, and when we could have some resolution to these conditions. Again, the anguish amongst our members of these things continuing from one administration to another has met its end. Our diplomacy, our patience, is at its very end with these things not being properly addressed. As you probably know, I don't know how much influence you have in contract negotiations, but we're well over a year without a contract. We consider this just a blatant disrespect or disregard for the human element here in the Chicago Transit Authority. I have a young lady, I know she can't speak, but this young lady faced policies that were blatantly disrespectful and not allowing her to pump breast milk for her baby, something she desired, and basically these conditions put her in jeopardy because of a proper place not being provided. It's a health concern, so her and her baby were at risk. And this is just one of many issues, one of many examples that needs to be corrected here at the Chicago Transit Authority. So that's why I'm here today on International Women's Day to speak and lend a voice to the conditions at the authority that need to be addressed for the workers. You take care of the workforce first. They're way down on the priority list, way down. I hear about all this beautification and all these Google ideas and things to bring up ridership. The human element, the unions that provide this service, that support this service, must receive some attention. Thank you.
Thank you as well for bringing these issues to our attention. If I could, Dorval, could you speak to some of these issues?
Certainly, I think there are a myriad of issues that have been raised by both Mr. Sams and Mr. Franklin. Let me go through a couple of them and just give you updates on where we are. With regards to the porta potty issue, we have taken steps to improve and add lighting to all the porta potties that we currently have in our system. I also have requested that the contractor who maintains the porta potties upgrade their maintenance schedule to every day. In some instances, they were doing it every day, but in other instances, some of the porta potties, they were only doing it occasionally during the week. I also have requested, and we plan to install deluxe porta potties that will have running water and upgraded features this spring when the weather warms up enough to allow us to do that. Part of the problem with the deluxe porta potties is that when in the wintertime, the water freezes. But we are committed to upgrading them this spring, providing those additional services to them, so that the issues that they're specifically raising with regards to those porta potties are properly addressed. I also want to be clear about the fact that I recognize that they are not the best option. Porta potties, for anybody who has to use them, are never really the best option. We do have a number of fixed facilities that are in place, in addition to that are also maintained on a daily basis to ensure that they have the supplies and are kept clean. We also contract with over 100 different companies and vendors to allow our employees to use their facilities during the course of the day. Clearly, there's no easy solution to this kind of a problem when, as Mr. Sams indicated, we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But where there are opportunities to make improvements, we will do that. I am more than happy to continue to work with Mr. Sams to improve and identify ways which we can improve the conditions that our employees operate under to ensure that they have sanitary conditions and that there are no issues associated with that. With regards to the homeless issue, Mr. Franklin is correct that we have a very serious homeless problem on CTA. Mr. Franklin mentioned the meeting that he attended over at City Hall about a year ago. That was a meeting that I invited him to attend because I needed to make sure that everyone understood the impact that this problem was having, not only in terms of CTA service, but also to, our employees who have to interact with and deal with this problem on a daily basis. We continue to work very closely with the city to develop strategies that can address this issue. As all of you know, it is a very complicated conversation, both in terms of CTA, but also in terms of the homeless population itself and the reasons for why they end up on CTA's system, which have nothing to do with CTA, but ultimately we're impacted by and are the victim of that process. We continue to have conversations with both the city, with the Chicago Police Department and our mass transit unit, and with our own security services to address the concern that we have about homelessness and the continuous riding problem that we have. We have contracted with social service agencies to provide additional support to our efforts to both make contact with and address the homeless individuals that are on our system to find ways to properly deal with that situation in a humane way that recognizes both the reality, which is CTA is not a place for someone to live, but yet people need to have options on what they're going to do outside of living or sleeping or spending the night on CTA. This is a problem for which there's no quick fix, for which there are no easy solutions, but I am very committed to working with the union and with Mr. Franklin and with our employees to find better and more effective ways to deal with it. I am hopeful that we'll start to see progress in that arena. We are planning to sit down with members of Mr. Franklin's union to get suggestions and ideas from them on how we can better deploy our contractual services to support the homeless problem that we see. Mr. Franklin knows, I looked at the pictures that he shared with me. Mr. Franklin knows that I have pictures that are even more graphic than that I have shared as part of my advocacy over the fact that we need to find a fix to this. And I'm as committed and as frustrated and as supportive as Mr. Franklin is to find a solution to this problem that will benefit both our customers and our employees in a very positive way. And I will continue to work on that as we move forward. Finally, with regards to the contract negotiations themselves, I think both Mr. Sands and Mr. Franklin know that we've had well over 30 negotiation sessions since negotiations began. We continue to work in good faith with them to see if we can reach resolution of our various issues that we are in negotiations over. And ultimately, if we're unable to reach some sort of satisfactory resolution, we always have the ability to go to interest arbitration and let a impartial third party determine what the appropriate contract should look like. We are continuing those negotiations. We had meetings with Local 241 just yesterday. We've got meetings scheduled later this month with both 241 and 308, and we proposed additional negotiation sessions that we expect to hear back from both locals on in the very near future to continue those conversations and see if we can get to some sort of satisfactory resolution so that we can put the contract into place, we can address the wages that our employees need, and that we can also address the other negotiated items that are important to both, I think, Mr. Sams and Mr. Franklin's members, to our employees, and to the customers that we serve.
Dorval, just do me a favor. I think it would be helpful just to continue to keep the board updated on especially the issue of the porta potties. I think you've said that right now there are 20 locations. Those 20 locations, they do have lighting now.
That's correct.
But you're going to be putting in deluxe.
We're going to be upgrading them in about a month. I mean, as soon as the weather
And
consistently
there are only 20,
turns.
so throughout our system, there are only 20 locations that we're talking about?
It may be 27. It's around
Okay,
that
it's in the
number.
20,
Yeah.
It's in the 20 number. So that issue, want to just continue to keep the board in the loop on. The other issue would be the issue of the homeless situation.
Yes.
Working with the city, I think that's something we would like to be kept up to speed on. And then another issue was the recovery time.
Yes.
Up to 5
So
minutes. So
I didn't speak to that particular issue. Clearly, the challenge with our bus schedules, as Mr. Sams will attest, is that you can create a schedule all you want. What ultimately happens in terms of the performance on that route is subject to a large number of variables. Congestion, construction, accidents, fires, all sorts of things can impact that, which ultimately impact the recovery time that the operators have at the end of the route. The recovery time is actually intended to address the need to get the route back on schedule, but it is also an opportunity for operators to take a personal if they need to and to address that. My service planning people do continuously look at the schedules and we do have discussions about challenges that we're seeing on the runs and on the routes to make sure that we can find ways to adjust those schedules to reflect the reality of the service that we're providing. That has an impact on two sides. One is our employees in terms of the recovery times that they face at the turnarounds themselves, but also on our customers in terms of their expectations and how how reliable that service is and how frequently and on schedule that service is provided. I mentioned earlier to you that there are a number of things that we're working on to improve our bus service. All of those issues that we're working on are really intended to address reliability issues, which are a number of the things that we're talking about, which ultimately feed into the recovery time that Mr. Sams is talking about that impacts what our employees can do during the time that they reach the end of their particular route. So we're going to continue to work on that. I understand the interest of the union to have enough time to review schedules before a pick. I'm certainly willing to have conversations with Mr. Sams and the union to see what we can do to provide them, additional time, recognizing that the development of routes and schedules is a very complicated process, and many times we ourselves are pressed to get that work done within the timeframes that are allotted to meet the collectively bargained for schedule for picks that we have under our contract. So that's an issue that certainly is worthy of discussion. I know that these issues have come up as part of the collective bargaining negotiations. We'll continue to have those conversations with Mr. Sams and figure out how we can better address their desire to have time to properly review the schedules, along with our need to have the time to create the schedules that we need to deal with the realities of what we're seeing on the street. At the end of the day, I think it's important for all of us to understand that in order for us to provide the quality of services that we believe we should be providing to our customers, I need both our employees, Mr. Sams' members, Mr. Franklin's members, and my management team to work cooperatively. And in order for us to do that, there needs to be communication between us about issues of mutual concern that we can address and that we can deal with to move forward. To the extent that there are concerns that we need to address, we will address them. I think we heard many of them in the comments that we heard this morning. To the extent that there are additional concerns that either Mr. Sams or Mr. Franklin have that they wish to bring to our attention, we will certainly follow up with them as we continue to address the ways in which we can improve the overall service that we provide to our customers.
As I said earlier, I just think it would be helpful for us just to keep the board in the loop on these issues. We look forward to hearing from you and management kind of going forward on how we're I like to check these issues off and when we're addressing them and dealing with them. So
Absolutely.
That would be very helpful. Both to, is it Tommy? Tommy and Ken, thank you for coming down. Appreciate you coming before the board and bringing these issues to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and you'll probably see more of us.
All right.
Thank you.
Streets.
Everybody have a good day.
Thank you all for coming down, speaking today, and everybody else who came with you to attend our board meeting. And that concludes today's public comment section of the board meeting, sir.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is the approval of the February 8, 2017 board minutes that were previously distributed. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of February 8, 2017.
So
Move
moved.
Second.
Just want to make sure that Mr. Franklin got his phone back. Did the phone come back
Yeah.
to him? I want to make sure it's not sitting up here somewhere. Okay, it's been moved and seconded for the minutes. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion to approve the minutes passes with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding, Brad, that there will be no executive session today.
That is correct, Chairman Peterson.
All right, our next order of business are board matters. So let's do agenda item 5A and 5B as a single motion. I now entertain a motion to approve 2 ordinances. One, an ordinance appointing an alternate to the Board of Trustees of the Retirement Plan for Chicago Transit Authority employees, and the second, an ordinance appointing a trustee and an alternate to the Board of Trustees of the Chicago Transit Authority Health Care Trust.
So moved.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded already? All right. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion to approve board matter A and B passes with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. I will now entertain a motion to approve a resolution setting the time of the June 2017 Transit Board regular meeting.
Move it.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, and that is moving the meeting to the afternoon, and whatever the June date is. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion to change the time, 5C, passed with 6 yes votes. The resolution?
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is board item number 5D. I will now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance electing Arbel Rosales, Vice Chairman of Chicago Transit Board.
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez?
Yes, and thank you.
Yes, you should definitely say yes. Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion for Ms. Alvarez passes with 6 yes votes.
And thank you for agreeing to serve. Appreciate it. Our next order of business is agenda item number 5E. I will now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance appointing members to the Chicago Transit Board.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Yes, this will clear up all our quorum problems we've been having lately. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
Motion to approve 5E passes with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Director Rosales.
Yes, the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery met earlier this morning. The committee approved the July 2016 committee minutes, and the committee also reviewed the following item: an ordinance regulating authorizing a second 180-day experiment for the bus route number 31, which is 31st Street. The committee approved this item, recommended board approval for it, and placed it on the omnibus for board approval. And that concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you, Director Rosales. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Sibley.
The Committee of Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee reviewed the finance report and approved the February minutes. The committee also reviewed the following items: an ordinance regulating travel, meal, and lodging expenses pursuant to the Illinois Local Government Travel Expense Control Act, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Google to access authority property to collect images for Google Street View program, an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional trade agreement for 2017 with the City of Chicago through the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, an ordinance approving the authority's 2013-2015 Title VI program, triennial report, and authorizing submittal to the Federal Transit Administration. The committee reviewed all these items, recommended board approval for all of these items, and placed each item on the omnibus for board approval. That concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you, Director
Peterson.
Sibley. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Sibley?
So moved.
Second.
And also, the omnibus is, I miswrote it, stated by Ms. Alvarez and by Mr. Silver, so everything's in the omnibus. It's been moved and approved? Moved, seconded? Okay, so everything's in it. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion to approve the omnibus with everything in it passes with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a construction report. Chris.
Chris Bouchel, your Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Mary Person, Director of Diversity Programs.
So today we'll talk about 4 projects: the 95th Street Terminal Improvement Program, the Wilson Transfer Station Track and Structure Reconstruction, the Ravenswood Loop Signal Project, and the Illinois Medical District Rehab Project. So first today at 95th, we continue at 95th on schedule and on budget, and I'm going to kind of get aggressively to the photographs as we start to see some of the work springing out of the ground here, the result of constructing on top of the foundations. You've seen several months of holes in the ground and trenches. Now you're starting to see the fruits of that labor as we see the structure springing out of the ground for the new south terminal. You can see that we've taken out one of the two tracks here. You've got one track that's gone that would be to the right of that structure, and another track, the northbound track, that's still in. So we've constricted access. We've constricted access to the yard as we've sort of worked on the south terminal with the structures. And now, as you kind of see the structure for the new south terminal spring out of the ground, we're going to put back that track and then take it out on the other side and put out the companion to this structure upon which the new south terminal will rest. To the far end of this photograph will be the new bus bridge. To the near side will be an extension of the 95th Street Bridge, which will be an integral part to how buses travel through this new terminal. To the far side of this terminal, you'll see little column bases that will ultimately be the bases of the new bus canopy. So you can start to see how the building is taking shape as the structure construction continues. I'll also say at this point, we'll go back there, that as we start to work now on the east side, as we finish the track and very complicated track and interlocking signal and traction power work, and we go to the east side, we're going to start to move north as well. Moving north into the terminal area, into the area of the platform, will necessitate that we close the pockets or the track adjacent to the platform. While we keep the station open, the station stays open, but we start to close that track. And that, as we come north to complete those foundations and actually to work into the foundations for the north terminal, it will have an impact to service. It's a relatively minor impact to service. We've made announcements relative to it. I think most folks have been briefed on it. But the project, as it continues, it will have those impacts. We'll look to see sort of through the beginning of April to the beginning of October, or into I would say at this point, into the fourth quarter, to see those impacts continue. And that's as we do those foundations. It will. We'll have various impacts to the end of this project and the opening of both terminals. But this particular set of impacts on the ground here will go from the beginning of April until the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Okay, so what are we doing, handing out, talking with passengers, letting them know station's going to be, still open, but again, it's going to impact maybe travel times, or just, so what are we doing to kind of pass anything out to the public, making them aware of this?
Yeah, I think in general, much the same way that you've been briefed, we've briefed other elected officials. We've released the story to the news media, and we'll continue to promote it internally on our rail cars and our stations, on our website. In addition, we will work very closely with our operations department and planning department to put personnel out on in the stations, particularly in the areas that will be most affected. I mean, this is probably an area where we need to put people on the platforms within the loop area to make sure that folks get on the right train or understand the exact impacts at any one point in time. So all the elements that you've seen, we're now going to kind of take them out into the stations with people behind them to explain to our customers more succinctly what the exact impact of their specific travel is. So it's kind of building on the momentum that we've had through the website, through announcements, through briefings, to actually push that information directly into the station with personnel. I don't know if I'm getting all those details right, but
Two things. One, I think you've got to also coordinate with the Department of Communications. You've got to work with Brian's team on developing some type of material to hand out, because, it's great. I've heard about it on the TV, but everybody don't always, have access or will catch that 5-second blurb when it pops up. So I think having folks out there tell folks. The other thing that I would say too, is there anything to do, especially during rush hour in the mornings? I mean, I've been at 95th Street in the morning, and you've got a lot of folks starting at 4:35 kind of coming through there. But also, I've been out there during the evening rush hour when folks are getting off. So, those two peak periods of morning and evening rush hour, just, again, talking with passengers, I don't know if there's a way to minimize how disruptive it can be if we can do it off hours. I know we're gonna be doing it weekends. I mean, the good news is we've been able to, hopefully, as you mentioned, the project is on budget, on time. The warm weather has just really been phenomenal in terms of helping us probably keep a lot of these projects kind of moving forward. But that would be the thing that I would say. I'm just concerned, especially at 95th Street, because you've got Pace coming in there, you got Trailway or Greyhound. You've just got a lot of activity at that particular location. And I think trying to give the public as much of a notice as possible can not only help our customers, but help us as well in terms of how we communicate with them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's a good plan. We've obviously exercised this before in projects like the Red South, where we have first a formal message to elected officials, other internal stakeholders, and then we've pushed it out successfully to the community. But that point you raise about getting actually out into the stations is a really good one, because I don't know personally as a rider for 20 plus years, there's some times where I'll miss that car card, or I'll miss that announcement in the station. It's really the personal touch of someone handing it to me that kind of brings it right to the forefront. So I think that's a big experience that we've all learned and will take to heart. So I appreciate that input. Moving on to the Wilson Transfer Station. So lots of good news about Wilson. We're really seeing the...
Chris,
I'm sorry.
before we start, Carol, was there anything you wanted to add to the outreach that we're doing with regards to this particular activity?
No, as Chris indicated, we plan a very robust customer information campaign, including having folks both the week before and the week during the change out on the platforms advising customers of the change in service.
That will include social media, is that correct?
Yes.
So moving on to the Wilson Transfer Station, we're really starting to see there's no tunnel up there, but we're starting to see the light at the end of it in any case. The station is really taking form. You'll see in the photographs. Work continues on the east platform as well as on the canopy. We are completing work on track 3. This is the new Sunnyside ramp that goes down to the new Sunnyside aux entrance. On the right, you'll see the new track 3. So this track will be commissioned this weekend. There's lots of details relative to traction power commissioning, signal commissioning, et cetera. And it won't change the pattern of service up there in the short term, but it is a significant milestone. I would say, the project is, really kind of approaching its final stages as we build out the station houses themselves. If you kind of get a chance to see the structures you're going by, you can start to see, again, kind of like it's a pivotal report, because like the 95th Street station, as you look at it, you can kind of start to see some of the areas being filled in that, it clarifies how difficult it is to build out there and the intricacies of doing it. So you can kind of see the station house taking formation. I mean, this is really a modern station house with platforms that are both accessible, have clear sight lines, and are covered for the length of the train. It really begins to, I think, represent what both the board as well as President Carter is bringing in terms of amenities to our customers.
How old is this picture, Chris?
Maybe 3 weeks.
Okay, so you've made even more progress.
Yeah. A lot of the structure work took place in the late January, February timeframe. A lot of it is continuing now. Much of what the next phase will bring us on this project from the structure perspective is to demolish the farthest east track 4. I can go back to that. See, on the far right-hand side, that's the oldest piece of structure. That gets demolished. Additional foundation pieces get put in. Then the rest of that structure gets built kind of right adjacent to the track 3, which enables us to complete a lot of the elements, including the Gerber Building, which is the historic structure that we're doing the exterior renovation on and then offering for TOD. Once we get the structure demolished and can do the foundations in that area, we're able to advance that stage of it, as well as really get in and accelerate and complete the station houses. You've got an aux on the north side of Wilson, the main Wilson on the south side of Wilson, and then the sunny side further south near the Aldi and Target. So on the Ravenswood Loop Signal project, we are still sort of in the trenching stages of that project, where you get to see lots of pictures of people hanging messenger brackets. Those are the brackets from which all the signaling cable hangs. But we've also been able to advance into the construction of the foundations and the actual new relay houses. So once we bring all these wires in, we have to terminate them someplace, and those relay houses ultimately house all the computers and the other equipment that processes the safe movement of trains on that very critical branch. So the work continues, as I said, in the construction of these relay houses and other critical aspects of the work. The relay houses are assembled somewhere else and then pre-wired to the extent they can be, and then the cables are brought into them, or the signals brought into them, and the processors installed. That will happen over the course of this year into the end of the year and first quarter of next year. Someone installing a messenger bracket up on the existing structure. Illinois Medical District, we've closed the Damon entrance and are continuing to do work in there. The work is going well. Damon is not the station that gets the most work on it. It does get significant work. Ogden is really the big one. That's where we put the elevator in. So we complete Damon, and then we'll move to Ogden, and then finally down to Paulina. So really, Damon is the kickoff. It's going well. We can get to some photographs to sort of see. We're starting the demolition. These photographs, this kind of project moves pretty quickly, but you can see that we're cleaning out the station house and beginning taking up the topping slab, which is the part on the right here, to put down new flooring, and then work on the platform canopy. We also had some storm damage out here that you'll remember. We're in the process of pricing that damage and any minor schedule impacts that it might have to the project. So those elements are coming forward. So the work here also continues on time and on budget with no major issues outside of really kind of integrating that storm damage into the project, which is not a huge lift in any case.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris? I've got a 1:30 meeting I need for you and Mary, if you could just stop upstairs. I'd like for you to be in.
Okay.
If you could, okay. The next order of business today is new business. Is there any new business, Greg?
No, sir.
Since there is no new business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.